Okay, so good morning, Tony Thomas. How are you?
Good. Thanks, Jim. Good to see you again.
So we're chatting today because it's an exciting week because we're releasing some research that we conducted over the last few weeks to talk a bit more about Digital Shelf. And we've got some interesting results that we're going to be sharing on media, but also we thought we'd chat through the top line results here today. But first, before we delve into that research, I thought it'd be really good if you just give a quick overview of what's been going on in the online food delivery space, because it seems that every day there's a new announcement, and obviously that's been accelerated by the pandemic. But how do you see things happening right now?
I think stating the obvious, we have seen about 10 years worth of change happen in 3 months. I do not know if you follow anybody on LinkedIn, they've put up that big joke saying, what accelerated your digital transformation? CEO, CFO, CTO, and the last box is COVID-19, and everybody ticks COVID-19. So it's that sort of thing. And surprisingly, or not surprisingly, we have seen a lot of new shoppers online. And I think the figures show from Nielsen that there's about 1 million new shoppers online, which has led to the surge in FMCG shopping, right? And you look at the demographics of those people. Not surprisingly, you see over 55s come on board, which is fine, but you also see quite a lot of under 25s who you would expect to be digital natives, but have now seriously started shopping online, which has then led most of the retailers to recalibrate how they do this, which then has the knock-on effect on the brands, on how to work with the retailers to make sure they are found when people are looking for them.
And from the data I recall pre-pandemic, the level of online shopping was still relatively low in terms of penetration rates compared to a lot of other sectors, like access to healthcare or whatever, but online food shopping felt like it had been slow to really take off anyway before the pandemic. But yeah, it's really, I guess the genie's out of the bottle, isn't it? We're not going to go back. Why was it so slow to sort of accelerate before the pandemic?
I think it is due to the fact that even though everybody knew online shopping was there, if you look at a normal consumer, how do they shop? They do a big shop, and then there is the top-up shop that they do, which is why you have the supermarkets in that same format as well. You've got the big supermarkets and you've got your locals, which is like for the top-up shop. Given the fact that we have got COVID and people actually cannot go into a shop, and this is something we can talk about later on down the line, is both sets of retail, the supermarkets themselves have now recalibrated it. So people are now doing only one big shop, and when they go into a supermarket for that, the supermarkets themselves have spaced everything out, which means that they have taken out quite a lot of ranges and products from the different brands. And all these sort of products have gone online. So if you want to get some of the products, you can really only get it online. And that has just been a fallout of these circumstances. There might be, I do not know, a certain toothpaste that you like, but doesn't sell enough in a supermarket offline for them to stock it, so they will only have it online. It's one of those things. That has also led to that increase in online shopping because you cannot get it. And let's not even go down the days of toilet paper stockpiling, which happened earlier. So,
for those that actually don't know what Digital Shelf Optimisation is, can you sort of give us a quick introduction, because it's increasingly a big play for us, and we're seeing a lot of brands really interested in it. But what is Digital Shelf Optimisation?
I think if you look at search behavior online, when you search in Google, you know to a certain extent what are the paid ads, what are the shopping ads, and what are the organic search results. Similarly, when you go into a supermarket, there are two ways in which you can find the products. You can either go through the taxonomy, which is on the left-hand side, which gives you the categories, the subcategories, and then the products, or you can go through the search box. So these are the two ways in which consumers find any products online. Now, our challenge has been working with our clients to make sure that they come up in the organic search results on the supermarket websites when consumers search for it. So again, taking an example, when you want to find a Mexican spice, nobody is putting the brand name in. They're just putting in Mexican spice to see what comes up. And then they realize, oh, this is the brand that I can use, or this is the brand that I can use to make some chili con carne sort of thing. So it is coming up in that generic search terms.
Sure. And well, let's talk about the results that we've had come back from our survey, where we interviewed, I think it was 200 brand managers that had responsibility for e-commerce sales across some of these grocery retailers that we're going to be talking about, the likes of Tesco and that, so the big supermarkets. And we've had some really interesting results come back. Sort of the top line or the headline stat that we've pulled out is that 87% of FMCG brands plan to spend big across the grocery e-commerce sites in the build-up to the festive season. I guess that's not a surprise, is it?
No, that's not, because of the fact that they all realize that the market has moved there. How do you capitalize on that? So that really is not a surprising stat at all. It's a very encouraging stat. So nothing new.
I guess the next more interesting stat is that over 20% of them are not confident that the investment they're making is well spent.
Well, that I think there is going to be some natural wastage, but then there is also a piece on education of what you can do in order to make sure that you're being found online, as well as how to make sure that your spend is being done efficiently. Because if you look at it, you have a paid option where you can really put the money there and let it work its way through the system. So even though you can optimize that, there are a lot more tips and tricks that you could actually do in order to make that spend go further.
Do you think they're not aware of whether it's well spent because A, they don't know what they're doing, to put it simply, or B, it's a combination of that plus they're not getting the data and insight and reporting back? It could be a combination of those reasons, perhaps.
Yes, I mean, I think it would be a disservice to say that the potential listeners to this do not know what they're doing. I'm sure they're all heads of e-commerce by knowing what they're doing. However, there are always benefits that an innovative agency like ours can bring to the table, because we are following these algorithms that the retailers work on a daily basis. And as you can imagine, the supermarkets themselves keep tweaking it. So, for example, Tesco has got a new section called Best of the Best that they're trialing, which shows you the products that have got a really high number of reviews. And Sainsbury's have got something similar, also called Top Rated. But if you look at it, last week, Tesco took down the Best of the Best to focus on back to school. So the supermarkets themselves are playing around with this because they want to see what is it that gives the customer the best user experience and converts. So is it back to school or is it best of the best? They are trialing the same. And it's our job to make sure that we monitor these things. And if Tesco is looking at best of the best, how do we get our clients in there? If it's looking at back to school, how do we get our clients in there?
Sure. Well, you say I'm doing them a disservice, but actually one of the stats that came out of the survey was that 20% of people actually didn't know each retailer had its own algorithm, which has a huge impact on their visibility, right, for search terms across those different platforms. So, algorithms are hugely important, whether it's you're playing with Google, but also hugely important on these different platforms, right? So they're all different. Like Amazon has its own algorithm. We don't know exactly how they work. We can do a lot of testing, and that's what we do.
That is correct, but I would think, in the defense of the heads of e-coms here, they are only getting the information from their national account manager, who is more focused on offline. So Tesco tells the national account manager for the brand, this is how we're doing it. And it is possible that the person at Tesco who is talking to the national account manager for the brand doesn't actually know what the algorithm consists of, because they are not close enough. There's somebody else in the online team who are working with the algorithm. So there is a slight disconnect still between the offline and the online and the people actually talking to each other?
It seems to me there's a lot of similarities between some of the work we're doing here and some of the work we're doing in sort of SEO principles as well. Really, there's a lot of similarities and crossover, and like one of those things is the use of images and assets, and how to have a tailored approach with that, with the use of those assets. And again, one of the things that came back on the survey was that actually not every brand has a bespoke approach to how they're actually creating assets, or they're using the same assets across all the different platforms and across their own sort of sites as well. Can you tell us a bit more about the work we're doing to help the brands optimize using those kind of?
Yeah, I mean, essentially what you've asked is two questions. One is the similarity with SEO principles, which there is no denying that is true. Because if you look at how Google operates, Google wants to get you to the answer in the shortest number of steps for any question that you're asking, right? So I would think the supermarkets also work in a similar-ish manner. They want you to get to the product that you are looking for in the shortest number of steps. If you are looking for a particular type of dog food, for example, you go into dog food, look at the category, is it for kidney issues, or is it diabetes, or is it weight management, and then you get the correct product. So the retailer is trying to get you into the product that you want in the shortest number of steps. Now, the second part of the question is about images. And this comes from the fact that offline consumers now want the online experience to replicate the offline as much as possible. When you go into a supermarket, you pick up a product, you look at it, you look at the back, and you read what the ingredients are, and you might even look at how quickly can you make it, if it's a recipe, and things, because these things are all factored into your purchase. Now, what we're trying to do and make sure that all of our clients, brands that we work with, know that consumers online shop in a similar manner. They want to see the front of the pack. They want to see the back of the pack. They want to see if it's gluten-free, for example. And they also want to see, if you were using this to make a dish, how quickly does it happen? Is it 30 minutes, 40 minutes? Because that impacts on whether they would buy the product or not.
Yeah.
Then you have the limitations from the supermarkets themselves as to how many images can you show. So each supermarket, one might be 4 images, one might be 6 images. So you have to be aware, like you said, each of the retailers has their own algorithm, and what are the limitations of those algorithms. So if you can only show 4 images, which is best for you're going to show? That's what it comes down to. And that's where we have.
Yeah. So if I was studying the same can of dog food across 6 different online grocery sites, I mean, how different would my strategy really be from one to another? Is it a stark difference, or is it a nuanced difference in terms of the amount of the mix of video and still, the product descriptions? You know, how different are those strategies? I presume they're different depending on the different algorithm levers that need to be pulled.
Yes. So it, as you can imagine, most of the retailers want you to go to the product that is selling the most. That is one. That's the popularity and where you are, and the sales velocity of a product, how quickly are you selling it. On the converse side, they don't want to send you to a product which is out of stock. So retailers are always going to be looking at their stock levels, what is selling the most, and how do they tweak it so that the ones that you want to buy, if it's out of stock, is being replaced by something that you can get quite quickly. So if you look at dog food retailers in the UK, we've got Pets at Home, we've got Zoo Plus, and in both of them, and maybe the Ocado equivalent, which I think is called Fresh, I just need to check on that. So they would look at how many pictures or images are allowed on Zoo Plus. If it's 6, do they allow a video? Then you can have a rotating video showing the front and the back of the pack. Most importantly, what is the weight? If you're ordering something online, right, you're more than likely to go for the 12 kilo pack rather than the 4 kilo, because the delivery is one-off and it's coming anyway, and you can do it for a month. So these sort of factors come into play. I know we're talking about dog food, but dog food is very weight-based and based on the conditions that your pet might have.
What's the role of like own brand and all of this? You know, is you know, you hear Amazon, for example, that they have their own brands that they can favour and ahead of third-party brands. How do you, as a brand yourself, navigate the sort of own brand presence on some of those grocery sites, and are they favoured above your brand? Does the algorithm favour own brand over sort of non-own brand? So I guess that's the question I'm asking.
So what we mean by own brand is what is referred to as a private label in the trade. So you wouldn't actually know that brand is owned by Tesco unless you actually knew it.
Right.
So that is the first thing. Now, Tesco, Sainsbury's, all the supermarkets, what they do is that they look at the category where the sales volume is the highest and where the profits are the highest before they decide they want to introduce a private label product in there. So if you look at personal care, for example, as a person buying, I don't know, Radox shower gel, you wouldn't buy, you might, but generally you wouldn't buy Tesco shower gel because they're not known for doing shower gels. However, if you were buying, I don't know, Schwartz garlic granules, you might buy Tesco garlic granules because you don't see the point of difference there that much. So this is where it comes into play, where the retailers decide which sectors they want to introduce a private label into, and when most of the time when they introduce a private label in there, it tends to be cheaper because obviously they want to try and get market share by going down that route. So that's where this play is. When you launch a cheaper product from a private label, it is more than possible that they would sell quite a lot more than the established brands. And we talked about sales velocity before. So the sales velocity actually takes them to the top of the search results. However, we are looking at it from the other side for our clients. What we're doing is using data that is publicly available. We identify the categories where the retailers are winning with private label. And based on those categories, we decide on the products that we target for our clients in order to eat away from that market share, which actually is the better way to do it because it's completely incremental revenue and it proves that the whole digital shelf optimization project works and gives you an ROI, obviously.
Yeah, and you sort of touched on something there, which is the use of our own technology, I guess, and tools from a monitoring or from a strategic perspective. And one of the things that came out in our survey was, you know, actually a large part of the respondents were not actively monitoring pricing strategies or promotion strategies amongst their own sort of competitor set. And we know that this can have a huge impact on a daily basis and lead to a huge amount of lost revenue. Why is it that there is a sort of quite a light touch sort of approach to monitoring this kind of activity when it has such a big impact on performance of seller?
I think it is two things. One, I think, is a level of knowledge of the fact that you can actually do it. So there are a lot of third-party tools out there which you can buy, but what they're selling you is a range of modules to monitor your own product. If the moment you bring a competitive product into this, that you're buying an add-on which leads up to the cost. So I think most people don't know that you can buy the add-on. Secondly, there are limitations of what the monitoring software can give you. For example, some of them we noticed during COVID could not give you out of stock data. Secondly, because of the queuing system in place, they couldn't give you any of the Ocado data, for example. So there are limitations, there are costs. And lastly, I would imagine it's a bandwidth issue. How much time do you have to do this? Somebody like us who's got teams dedicated to doing this can do it a lot more faster and give you the insights and the recommended actions rather than somebody internal who's looking, sifting through the data, trying to make sense of it, then deciding on an action. And by the time that action gets implemented, the next thing has happened. So you're forever chasing your tail on this.
Yeah. Actually, one of the questions we asked also is about the level of feedback that the retailers are providing. We asked respondents to rank the grocery retailers from best to worst in terms of providing that feedback. The results show that Tesco's were the best and Morrison's were the worst. What are your thoughts around that? I mean, why are Tesco's really head and shoulders above everyone else? Why is it Tesco's? I mean, I know they've got their own loyalty program and much more data and insight. Is this something Morrison's need to improve on? Or why are some lagging so far behind?
I think it's exactly what you just said. Tesco's have their own data program, which is run by dunnhumby, and they give access to that to the brands on Tesco. So as a brand manager, you can go into the dunnhumby set and you can see the data of how much more you've sold, where your gaps are, and things like that. So Tesco have the data, and it really looks like which supermarkets and how far are they on the journey online. And without any disrespect, we know that Morrison's are pretty much at the very back of their journey online. So that is just reflected in the data sets that they have. And Ocado is another one that is up there. You can get everything, all the data that you need. It's all there, if you can get on.
Yeah, and anecdotally, I know that if you want that feedback and you want that data, it comes at quite a cost, right?
Yes. Yes, that is correct. This is where we built our own systems, because there is no point in going to a client and saying, we can do this for you, but you need to invest £30,000 in an external tool, and then we can do it for you. So what we did is we developed it ourselves, which meant that we could give it at a one-off fee, which is not 30,000 in the first instance. And secondly, we could customize it to what the client wanted to see. So for example, if you wanted to see only your out of stock items, we could do that for you. And we could tell you, because of the out of stock items, what happened. How far down the rankings did you go on Tesco compared to how far down did you go for Asda? So we know that what the differences are, which then informs the client. If I'm coming back into store, for example, who do I prioritize to give stock to? Is it Asda, where I go up quicker, or Tesco, where I go up slower? These are just examples, so please don't take this to heart that Tesco is better than Asda or the like. I'm just using this as an example. Sure. So that gives you that intelligence as well.
So that's really interesting. So can you give us any insight into some of the actual work we're doing right now for some clients? Because I know we're busy at the moment going into the festive season, and it'd be really interesting to hear some examples of the kind of work we're doing.
I would say there's three things you can really focus on to make a difference. The first one is replicating the offline experience online. And my suggestion would be to optimize your images, text, and the like. Give the consumer the offline experience online, pack shots in front, back, any claims that you have, because that makes it very easy and it helps the conversion rate quite a bit. The second point I would look at is reviews, which is validation. As normal consumers, before we all buy a product, we all read the reviews. And it doesn't need to be millions of reviews, but fresh reviews. Reviews that have happened in the last 3 weeks, a month, so to speak, because you don't want to read something that's 6 months old and then you're like, oh, not sure what happened there. Lastly, what I'd say is focus on your stock levels, because there is nothing more frustrating than adding it to your basket and about to check out and it's grayed out and it's disappeared. So these are three things, if you focus on, you would at least be able to make a really good head start on digital shelf optimization. Or you could always speak to us, of course.
We can speak to us. Brilliant. That's really helpful. And we've got lots more research that we'll be sharing over the next sort of few weeks, and more case studies. We're also speaking at my Digital Shelf Summit, which is happening next month.
October 22.
Yeah. So, and of course, this is going to be, this whole acceleration of food delivery online. We're seeing so much going on at the moment. I saw Co-op yesterday announcing same-day delivery trials. It just seems that this is a huge focus as we all seem to sort of shop more and more online, both for top-up as well as the sort of big shops. What do you think about some of the sort of grocery brands that are teaming up with the likes of Deliveroo? Is that purely because they haven't got their own e-commerce foundations site built to the degree it needs to be built? Is that why they're partnering with some of these people?
I mean, first of all, this is not going away, as we can see from all the brands and the activity that is happening. And I would imagine that the tie-ups with Deliveroo would be, and Uber Eats, for example, it would be more of a short-term thing where they have access to distribution rather than anything else. Because while they build up their own system, they want to be in a position where they can actually get their product to people's houses. I mean, we can see that from Marks and Spencer. Till they came on board with Ocado on the 1st of September, you could buy it off Uber Eats.
Yeah.
So it's still, you get your own system up and running, you would use somebody else's distribution network, but at the end of the day, you would want your own and do it in that manner.
Great. Thanks for your time, Tony.
Thank you very much. I hope you found it helpful.
Yeah, very helpful. And thanks everybody for watching.